Hey guys, I want to welcome you back for this video. Today we're going to be talking about Enneagram Type 4, and we're going to be asking the question, what happens when good goes bad? And what this series is about, if you've watched any of the other ones in this series, you know that what we're talking about is we're identifying a few of the strengths of the type that could be overplayed and become potential weaknesses. When you move forward in your strengths, and if you don't allow yourself to develop in other areas of your personality, the things that you thought were strengths could actually become impediments to progress. And so we want to address each of the types, and we want to say, what does this look like when your strengths get overplayed? I like to think of each type as kind of having superpowers, and each one of us, of the Enneagram types, brings certain, gifts to the table that are just more natural to our personality bent, our personality type. But we also kind of bring some weaknesses as well. And so today we're going to be looking at the 4. If you want a good background on, of what the 4 is like, make sure you watch the other videos. I've playlisted everything, so you can just click on Enneagram Type 4 and you can watch the videos that I've made about the 4. The 4 is called the Individualist, and those videos will give you more information than I'm able to cover in this video. Today I just want to focus in on a few areas or strengths that could become potential threats or challenges in the person's life and in their work, primarily in their work environment. So, of course, let's do a little bit of background. 4s, are called the Individualists, and 4s naturally kind of feel like they don't fit in. They feel different. They feel like they want to be authentic to themselves, to the voice they're hearing. And I don't mean voice like they're hearing voices. I just mean the internal voice is what they're tapped into, and they're wanting to be authentic to that, and they're wanting to like the things they like, and they're not going to feel compelled to like things that everybody else likes. They're going to feel compelled to go with what they believe and what they feel, and what they feel is right, and what they believe is right, and what they believe ought to be done. And if you don't like that, then that doesn't bother them. If you don't understand, what they're about, they're not going to necessarily feel compelled to conform or to try to fit in. In fact, some of them, maybe in what we'd say their unhealth, maybe want to not fit in. They may be looking for, what is it that makes me different and unique and separate, and they can be kind of impulsed towards what makes them different, or what makes them special, or what makes them extraordinary. Ordinary is a word that is very problematic to 4s. Anything that strikes as ordinary or mundane, it doesn't sit well with 4s. And remember, 4 is a shame type, right? A worth type. So 2s, 3s, and 4s are all dealing with shame. And a little bit of a summary here. 2s deal with shame. And shame, what we're saying is kind of think of that question, what gives you the right to be alive? Why are you here? Why do you exist? What gives you the right to exist? 2s, 3s, and 4s are all kind of in their own way trying to answer that question. The rest of the types, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, we're not really asking that question. I don't think we think about that very often. It's not a cognitive thought, and it's not even like an unconscious thought. We just wake up and just go about our business, or go about handling the threats that we're facing, or the challenges we're facing, or our to-do list. We're not dealing with why am I here, and what am I, and who am I, and what makes me a person of value and worth. 2s will lean in, and they will become of value to you, and they'll become helpful and pleasing, and they'll get their sense of worth and value because they're kind, nice, and helpful, and useful, and productive to you. 3s, become superstars. They become high achievers. They become, top of their class, and in that sense, they deal with that issue of worth and value by all their accomplishments and by all their achievements, and by becoming the best, most admirable version of themselves. They look for the ideal and they try to strive to become that ideal standard. Fours, I think, are dealing with that issue of worth and value by saying, if everybody's the same, then of what value are we? You're just cogs in a wheel. So what makes you different? What makes you stand out? What makes you special? What makes you extraordinary? And so fours have that natural bent to see what's different. They have that natural bent, in their kind of their glasses they have on, or to see what's different, to see what's unusual, to see what's special. And so that makes them often very creative types who can just kind of intuitively know how to make something more aesthetically beautiful, or more like the ideal, or different than the ideal, like recreating the ideal in a sense. So let's what happens when that person goes to work? I have a video already on Can Fours Be Leaders? And if you haven't seen that one yet, you might check that video out. But let's say you're working in the work environment and you're a four, you're an individualist, and what are some of the strengths / potential weaknesses for the four? Well, let's go with the first thing that seems kind of the most obvious, is that impulse toward artistic expression or aesthetic beauty. That four's ability to say, this could be better, this could be different, this could stand out and be done in a more pleasing way, in a more professional way. This could be more poetic, this could be more beautiful, this could and then bring that into everyday reality. Fours naturally tune into that aesthetics, how things could be made better, and how they could be made more pleasing, and how they could be made unique and special and different. And that is a strength. That's a strength because think of like the designer. The designer is going to come in and they can just naturally see how to set this room up, or how to set this office up, or how to set. I don't see that. I can't. I don't see that. I don't see the way things ought to be like that. I can look at a magazine and I go, wow, yeah, okay, that does look great, But I think fours just have that natural bent to walk in and see, how things could be done special, to make them special, to make them different, to make them, better, to make them better. But the negative side of that is fours could get hung up on getting things just right, on those minor details, on those small details. They could get hung up on getting all those details right, that they might kind of miss the big picture and keeping the main thing. They might get over focused on like the minute details and getting those details just right. And when things don't live up to that reality, or when things don't live up to that, that ideal or that aesthetic ideal, which they often don't. Things often don't live up to that, and people often don't live up to those ideal standards that we have for them. When things don't live up to that ideal standard, or kind of when the office, or when the people, or the project, or whatever it is you're working on doesn't kind of measure up, I think a four is going to know that. They're going to see that, they're going to feel that, they're going to be frustrated by that things don't measure up to that ideal standard, which is part of what fourness is all about, is that feeling of loss, that feeling of something's missing. And I think fours are, no matter how perfect things get, or how great a project is, or how wonderful a new design is, I think my guess is there's probably going to be something in the four that's always going to feel like it could have been better. It could have been, more outstanding. It could have been, done with greater style, or greater. And when they look at other people's work, they're going to feel that compulsion to sort of evaluate theirs based on what other people have done. And there's going to be that frustration associated with making those comparisons. But I think that's part of what could make you successful, is making those comparisons and contrast. But then it could also bring a lot of disappointment, personal frustration. And then when you're frustrated and disappointed, fours have a lot of emotional energy, and that could be hard for people to process. I know that fours have a hard time even trying to explain what's going on the inside. That's what makes them feel different, is that they feel things at such a deep level. And I don't know that everybody's ready in a work environment. I don't think everybody's ready to try to process all those deep, heavy, strong emotions or / opinions. Okay, which is part of what makes you an individualist, is your strong opinions about things. So emotional intuition, number 2, emotional intuition. Fours automatically kind of pick up, sense how people are doing, intuitively. They just kind of pick up on what tensions are going on in the environment, conflicts that might exist, and the status of those emotional connections. Fours want to make connections with people, but it feels like sometimes the gears are off. Twos like really, just lean in and make those connections. And sometimes twos connect themselves with people they shouldn't be connected to, or with people they don't even necessarily, need to be connected to. But fours, I think, long for that connection, but it's like they constantly feel like they're struggling to make those connections. Like people want to keep it so surface level. They don't want to really get to know one another, and they don't really want to be genuine and real and authentic. And so there's always kind of like this frustration in fours that those connections just don't seem to happen like they want them to, which can then be problematic. Okay, fours can overwhelm people who aren't comfortable navigating this emotional territory. A lot of people are just kind of shut off emotionally, or shut off particularly to the negative emotions of life, the quote unquote negative emotions. I think fours might argue with us about what are negative emotions and what aren't. But I think a lot of people, they just kind of shut that stuff off, especially at work. At work, they just want to get their work done, just get their stuff done, move these papers from this side of the desk to that side of the desk. And a lot of people love that mundane, kind of, where everything's safe, where everything's predictable, where everything, is sterile. And fours are going to probably just shake that stuff up. They're going to feel like they're being inauthentic to themselves if they leave that at the door. They leave themselves at the door, so to speak, so that they can be this character, this robot, this machine in the office. That's not gonna be natural to a four to feel like that. And so when they bring, that emotional energy or that emotional power, that emotional zeal, with them into the workplace, realize it could overwhelm some people. When you're feeling surface, and when they are expressed, which fours are going to want to express those emotions, they're going to want to express those feelings and those opinions, unless they just get really frustrated. And then, of course, you're frustrated, okay? But when they get really frustrated, they might just shut it down and just realize, I can't be real with these people. I can't talk to these people. These people can't handle, they can't handle the full me. But just realize, a lot of people, they don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. They don't want to think about those deep things. They don't want to go there. They don't want to go to the deep end of the pool. Okay. And I think fours want to live in the deep end of the pool. They want to live in, especially I think about like the 4-5s, the 4-wing 5s, they're very, the bohemian, they want to go deep always. They want to search for meaning, and they want to find meaning in the nuances of life, and realize a lot of people just don't want to go to the deep end. They want to stay splashing around in the shallows. They want to stay in the shallows where everything's safe, where everything's on the surface level. And, they talk about football games, they talk about haircuts, and they talk about, weather. And fours just, I think they get so frustrated with that. Like, why can't people just be real? Why can't people just open up? What are people afraid of? Well, realize there's 3 types on the Enneagram, right, that are fear types. So there's a lot that people are afraid of. That's not your problem, because you don't deal with fear as much as you deal with worth and value. Okay, so we're all understanding each other, and we're all learning to be sympathetic with each other. Okay, so the next thing is the large capacity for the depth of feeling. The large capacity for the depths of feeling. Fours make good counselors because of this. Because they can empathize well with people. They can sense, they're not afraid of those deep feelings. When people, open up and they share what's going on in their life and their pains and struggles, fours don't panic. They don't hit the panic button. They don't hit the retreat button, or they don't hit the escape hatch, They'll sit there and deal with people in their pain, and they're not afraid of it. They're not afraid to go to the deep end of the pool. They're not afraid of challenging thoughts and challenging emotions. And they aren't afraid to empathize with you. They aren't afraid to actually sit there and feel the pain with you. I think twos can do this as well, pretty well. Threes, for whatever reason, in the middle, seems like they don't do that well. They shut down to their own feelings, and it's hard for them to be very compassionate, at times with your feelings. But fours will join you. They literally join you in that emotional space. In fact, they might even start off the conversation with, tell me about your tragedies, which is a little unnerving, right? you guys got to understand that most people don't want to think about tragedies. They don't want to think about pain. But I've had more than one occasion where a 4 will sit down with me and they're like, tell me about the most painful things that have happened to you in life. Tell me about your tragedies. And they want to connect over those tragedies. And realize a lot of people don't want to go there. I mean, they want to avoid those kinds of those. I think I've said enough about that. So realize that 4, sometimes you can express too much emotion for other people to process. And sometimes when you kind of insist on your feelings being understood and validated and appreciated by other people, not everybody can go there, right? So you may judge others at times who don't have that emotional capacity, okay? You might, or don't want to access that emotional capacity. You may sometimes come across like judgmental of those people, like a little bit of disdain for those people because they want to keep things at the surface level. So your ability to feel and sense and talk about and understand deep emotions could cause you to be frustrated with those who don't, can't, and won't. Okay? Just realize that could be the dark side of that. Okay, the next one, the courage to be authentic. Okay? The courage to be authentic. That's a strength, to not back down and to not cave in just because everybody else is going along with it and everybody else is doing it. The 4 is going to say, no, I'm sorry. Even if I stand alone, even if I'm all by myself, I'm going to live by what I believe is right. I'm going to follow my heart. I'm going to do what I think is right. 4s value being real. They tend to be truth tellers like 8s. They tend to be direct and truthful and honest. At least they want to be. They might struggle a little more than 8s do at sharing the truth because they may sense that you don't. They may be a little more cautious than 8s are at being direct. But they would rather displease someone than communicate in a way that feels false. I think false is a hard thing for 4s. Sometimes you can come across like you're being false, like you're wearing false masks and false face to the rest of us, but I don't think a 4 is trying to be false. I think they're trying to seek out what's really true. I think 4s are on a quest to really understand themselves and understand the world and to be authentic, but sometimes that comes across to the rest of us like, wow, you seem like a different person than you were 6 months ago. You look different, you talk different, you dress different than you did 6 months ago. Wow, when will the real you, come to the surface? And so people watching you over a time period might feel like, you're changing, but I don't think a 4 is trying to change. I think a 4 is trying to really be real. They're trying to really be genuine, and they're kind of struggling with knowing what that looks like or knowing what that is, and trying at the same time to fit in without blending in. I think 4s want to fit in without blending in. And so realize, your walk is complicated. 4 stuff is complicated, and it's even more complicated to those of us who aren't 4s, because how could we possibly really understand what's going on in your heart and mind? I'm just an outsider observer, reading, interacting with, watching on film, trying to understand. I have a daughter that's a 4, and I have lots of friends and of course that are 4s, and I've had lots of interactions with people that are 4s, of course. And 4s are the most active on my YouTube channel. 4s blow up my comments more than any other. They're watching my videos more than anybody else. You guys are, because I think you're trying to search and understand better who you are and why you feel what you feel and why you're led in the way you're led, and are just sometimes very aware that you're different. You're aware that you're different, or that you think and feel like you're different. And so I think you're on that journey that you could really guide a lot of rest of the people that ought to be on the journey but won't take the time to do that introspective work or that reflective work. I think 4s are naturally wired to want to do that introspective and reflective work, to understand themselves better, to be authentic, to be real. And they're wrestling with, why don't I feel like I fit in? Why do I feel like I'm not connected? And I'm working so hard at it. I'm trying so hard to not be left out. I'm trying so hard to meet that ideal and to exceed that ideal. And it just seems like you just keep getting disappointed, and you keep getting frustrated, and you keep getting hurt, and like it's just not working for you. And I get that. I'm sympathetic to it. I can't say I fully understand it, but I'm sympathetic to it, and I'm trying my best here to help, relay some information that might be positive for you. Sensitive to the status of human connections. Okay, sensitive. Well, what's the danger of being authentic? Well, okay, what if you're authentic in somebody's face and you say what you feel? Man, they may not be ready to hear it, okay, because there could be a dark side to being authentic. You may push others to be honest in ways they're not ready to be. You might get too deep with people too quick, and then they're embarrassed by what they said, or embarrassed by, by their response to you. And again, you might judge those who are unable to adhere to such high standards for emotional truth as being authentic. And so now you've got this rift between you and these other people because, you look at them as kind of being fake or phony. Or they're a little bit unnerved by your genuineness or your authenticity, that now the relationship's suffering a little bit because of that. Okay, last one, sensitivity to the status of human connections. Okay, so 4s have the ability to see and understand how well or how not well people are connected to each other. They can kind of pick up, on the obstacles in relationships, on the challenges in relationships, and whether or not people are relating authentically or not. So they kind of have this measuring ability intuitively to know there's problems in this office, there's problems between these two people. They can kind of pick up. I think you 4s know what I'm talking about. You have this intuition, where you can kind of pick up on emotional disturbances between people and relational disturbances between people. I think you're always looking for what's missing, you're looking for what's different, and you see these people relating well, and then these two over here, there's tension, and you can see there's a difference in the way this person talks to these people and the way they talk to all those people. And so 4s pick up on those little nuanced things like that. I think 4s, 5s and 4s can be kind of lean in a little bit to like the spirit world or the spiritual world. I'm not meaning like, necessarily Christianity and world religions, but kind of like, the spiritual world, right? Like the spirits that are around us, angelic, demonic, what have you. And I'm not going to get into that discussion, but I just mean, I think 4s tend to like have their eyes and ears open, that deep into the pool thing. They have their eyes and ears open to pick up information from levels that maybe the rest of us are just not aware of or looking at or thinking about. Maybe we'll have to do another video about that sometime. All right, so what's the potential danger in the sensitivity to the status to human connections? When 4s focus too much on how people are relating, they can get stuck wanting to fix relationship issues instead of doing the job. You got a job to do, right? You're supposed to move the papers from this side of the desk to that side of the desk, but you can get kind of caught up in the relationship stuff, in the office or at the workplace, and maybe miss some deadlines. And again, 4s, they'll miss deadlines because they kind of live like they're above the law, like 8s do. Again, back to some similarities between you and 8s. Kind of like live above the law. They may have trouble accepting the real limitations of some connections or individuals, that some people just won't connect at a deep level. I was amazed this last week. My family and I went and saw Frozen 2, and I was just doing character studies the whole time I was watching the movie. Olaf is a 7 like me, which was kind of a humbling experience, right? Olaf. I hate to think of myself as Olaf, but it is what it is. And Anna is a 6, and Elsa is a 4. Watch the films, either one, first or second one. You'll see Elsa, torn. She's trying to be authentic to who she is. She's trying to, come to grips with her identity and her personality and what she brings to the table and her gift. But it estranges her from her sister. It estranges her from people. And I think 4s get this, that they're trying to figure out who they are and what they're here to do, what the meaning of life is, what the purpose is, how to, connect with people. All this is on the one hand, but on the other hand, what happens is it seems like sometimes in that search and in that quest, in that going deep, they sometimes, inadvertently, I think, push people away from themselves, push people away. And that's where you get that push-pull dynamic that goes on with 4s, where they seem to lean in and then they scratch you and they move away, and they lean in and they scratch you and they move away. I don't think that's intentional. I mean, maybe for some unhealthy ones it is, but I don't think it's intentional. I think 4s are just trying to figure out, where do I fit and what am I supposed to do and how do I make a difference? And life's got to be more than just making money and being quote unquote successful in the eyes of the world. And I think you guys are right about that. I think, we could all learn something from that. All right, so this brings this video to an end. As always, be present to life. I don't know that I gave you any answers. Maybe it just raised more questions for you, but maybe that's all 4s need, is some good questions. Anyway, be present to life. Don't miss what's right in front of you for the perfect ideal. You're longing for that ideal relationship. You're longing for that ideal spouse. You're longing for that ideal job. And the thing is you can spend your whole life, trying to get to that ideal, that you miss the joy and the happiness of what is, the relationships that are. And maybe people won't go as deep, and maybe they won't understand you fully, and maybe they, will, maybe things are going to be a little clunky for you, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. And that doesn't mean you can't have happiness, and it doesn't mean you can't experience life to the fullest. All right, see you guys next time. Blessings.